Hey, what's going on guys? John here, and today I'm going to do an in-depth video review for the Valve Steam Deck. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the actual Steam Deck itself, some of the configurations in terms of buttons and layouts. We'll go through the actual Steam Deck interface. I'll show you some really cool add-ons that you can actually do with the Steam Deck, and then I'll also show you some cool accessories that I have and ways that you could transform this almost into like a mini computer. So let's first start with the overall interface itself. We'll talk a little bit about the specs. So, you know, the easiest thing to probably compare this to would be something like the Nintendo Switch. I've had the Switch now for many years. I bought it in its first iteration in 2017. And the Steam Deck is really almost what I would consider to be a portable computer. It basically, on default boot, runs the Steam OS, which allows you to log into your default Steam account that you would use on your desktop or laptop. And you can now go in and actually start utilizing many of the games that would be more or less designed for a controller on the Steam Deck. You have your two joysticks here on the left and the right. You've got your D-pad. This is basically what would be considered almost like a select or rotate button between menu buttons here on the left, and then you also have almost a triple line similar to what you'd see on like an Xbox controller here on the front right. And then you have your Y, X, A, and B buttons. You have these two pads here which can almost emulate a mouse. I don't frequently find that I'm using this with a lot of games, but kind of cool that they have those included. You have a Steam specific button here which will actually load up the menu here, and then another triple dot button here. So many of these have different functions depending on the games or what you're actually doing within the games. You have your volume control up here at the top, so plus and minus, so fairly easy to control that. You have L1, L2, R1, R2. You've got your power button here, and then you also have your USB-C charging port up here at the top. This also has some ventilation here up through the center, so a lot of accessories I found will work around this, but this is basically where you're going to get your fan going as this cranks up, as well as here in the back. Additionally, you have an R4, R5, as well as an L4 and L5 here in the back. So this has more than enough buttons. The ergonomics of this, you know, just using it for several hours, if I was sitting playing, whether or not I'm like in a plane or just hanging out on my couch, it's very, very comfortable. Steam Deck does ship with a case, which is very nice. So it fits perfectly inside the case and is it's like a hard shell case, so that's something you can bring with you very easily. In terms of expandability, you have a couple options here. You can buy the Steam Deck with base storage that will start out around, I believe, 64 gigabytes, and then it ranges up. But you are going to end up, you know, going a little bit more in terms of what you expect to you know, spend on this if it's something you're going to go with upgraded storage. I decided to opt for the smaller storage size in the deck and actually just get a micro SD card at 512 gigabytes that I could just insert here into the base. Additionally, you can also get a dock for this, whether or not it's from Valve directly or a third party, and some of those docks actually have storage capabilities. So I thought I'd show an example of one of those. I have one here. This is a dock that I recently got, a third party dock, and this actually has a slot up here at the top. You can slide this off, and this actually will give you the ability to add a full M2 solid state drive right into the top of the dock. So if you want to add even more storage, you have options with third-party accessories like this one. So pretty cool. Another thing that's really nice about some of these third-party accessories that work seamlessly with the dock is this basically plugs in through the USB-C port on the top. This more or less gives me the capability. I could just rest it here on the dock, and if I wanted to connect a mouse and keyboard to it, I could actually use it as almost a mini PC, and I could even go a step further and connect an HDMI cord to an external monitor, and it would almost act as though I've got like a laptop docked or a desktop really plugged in. This has some pretty good specs. You have a 3200X Ryzen CPU inside of it, and this thing just absolutely screams. I've not had any performance issues with games that I've installed directly on the deck. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the interface, and then we'll boot up a more demanding game just to give you an idea of gameplay. But let's actually go through and just go to the main menu of Steam here. So by default, this more or less is very similar to what you would get with like Steam Big Picture if you were on the desktop. I can go through the home page. So if I hit A here, this basically takes me to any news, updates, friends, all the stuff that's going on. If we go back, we can go into our Steam library. So I was able to sync this all up, and a really cool feature of the Steam Deck is it will actually give you a compatibility score sort of based on whether or not they believe the game will run or not. So you can see, like for example, Alan Wake, it gives me a green checkbox. If I hit A, I can actually install this. I have all the game info, how much I played it, and if you go over to this game info tab, it actually will tell you if it's Steam Deck verified. So I can go into details, and it will let me know that all functionality is accessible when using default controller. The game shows the Steam Deck controller icons. The in-game interface text is eligible to read, legible on the Steam Deck, and the game's default graphic configurations also perform well on the Steam Deck. So this means that you're going to have full compatibility and everything is verified, and you're not going to run into any issues running this title at all. Now, if we actually go back, I'm going to go to all games, and I'm just going to find a random game here. So 7 Days to Die, you can see, gives me this yellow exclamation point. So if we go to this, this game basically is what they consider playable. And then they'll give you remarks as to maybe what could be an issue when you go to load these games. So you can see with this one, it says, this game's launcher setup tool may require the touchscreen or virtual keyboard, and it may have difficult to read text, but everything else is fully compatible. So it's playable, but you may have to, you know, kind of work around some of the pieces here. I was able to load up a old school remaster of one of the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster games, which those originally came out in the 90s. So it was kind of obscure for me to think, oh, it's not going to be compatible. But there's actually some scenes in the game where you have to name the characters, and that requires the keyboard. So in order to do that, Steam Deck will actually launch a virtual keyboard, and you can literally touch the screen, or you could plug in an external keyboard through like a dock, and you could do it that way. But ultimately, I was able to play it just fine, despite the playable feature here and maybe it giving me some warnings. So I would say if you have that icon, definitely try it anyways and give it a shot, and in most cases, you probably will be able to play the games with some limitations. Now, if we actually go back, we may be able to find some games. I don't know if I have any here specifically off the top of my head, but there will be certain ones. So Age of Empires 2 here, for example, if we load into this, it actually gives me a crossed out icon, and it will say unsupported. So it says Valve is still working on adding support. So that doesn't necessarily mean that the game won't work, but they haven't actually confirmed its availability or it's verified as a playable game. So these are going to be a little bit more of a mystery. And then you will find other games. So if I go back to, let's see, I'm just going to back all the way out here. I know some of my recent games. So for example, Hunt Showdown, this is a game that they actually confirmed as fully unsupported. So if we go in here and go to details, it says the game's anti-cheat is not configured to support Steam Deck. So you know for a fact that this game will not actually run on the Steam Deck. So you will have some full limitations with games, but generally most of the games you're going to be playing on this will be controller based, and you should have full support. So overall, in terms of interface and everything, really nice, it's fairly straightforward. Some of these third-party accessories that work seamlessly with the dock. Nice little performance overlay here, so I can see how much battery life I have left. I can more or less gives me get more advanced views. I could just rest notification settings, and if I wanted to connect friends, a mouse and keyboard to it, I could actually use it as almost a mini PC, and I can even go a step further and connect an HDMI cord to an external monitor. And it would almost act as Rumble settings, like a laptop dock or a desktop, really plugged in. Straightforward in terms of a lot of settings. Pretty good specs. You have a 3200X. Getting into some other things you can do with this that are really cool. And I actually went in and I've not had any performance issues with games that I've installed directly on older school. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the interface. This is an absolute monster for running older emulators from older games, just to give you an idea of gameplay. Nintendo, but let's actually go through any of those older consoles. Just go to the main menu of Steam here. So able to go in and you can do research on this similar to what you would get with like Steam Big Picture if you were on the desktop. My homepage here, through the homepage, and I go to library. So if I hit A here, this basically takes me to basically this collection, any news, updates, and this basically created all the stuff that's going on. I just added games from Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, so I was Super able to sync this all up. So I can actually load in here with the Steam Deck. Super Nintendo, for example, it will actually give you a compatibility score, cover art, sort of based on whether or not they believe the game will run or not. To do a lot of this, so you can see, you'll have to go into what's called, for example, Alan Wake. It gives me a green check here in a little bit after we do a demo, but let's actually boot up. We'll boot up this ROM game, and then I'll actually show you a more graphically intense game, just to show you a little bit of a comparison here. So this again should work pretty well. I guess this one, for whatever reason, is saying it's downloading. Maybe it had a small update of some kind through the emulation software. So it's already booting. This will go in pretty quick. And this puts like little graphics on the side, because traditionally when you're playing a game like this, back in the day, it would have been on a CRT. And these games work really, really well. No issues with like smoothing, anything like that. You know, no graphical interference. So this thing is just an absolute beast when it comes to emulation. So that was one big perk of the Steam Deck that I really wanted, to be able to go back and play some of those old school Game Boy games, things like that, or even if you wanted to play some moderately newer retro games, you have that option. So this works really well for emulation, as you can see. I'm gonna back out of this and we're gonna go to home, and I'm gonna launch a more graphically intense game. So I'm gonna go to my library and we'll go all the way over to installed, and we'll load up, this is Middle of Earth Shadow of War. This is a very graphically intense game. This probably will take a little bit longer to boot up, but this game is great using controller. You know, typically when I actually was, you know, I got this on the PC on Steam originally, and I would just connect my Xbox controller to this, and that's what I was playing when I had this going. Now, this particular game was actually so large that I had to load this on the micro SD card, whereas other games, you know, you're not necessarily gonna be able to fit them on like the base storage. So this was a game that was just too large. I think it was over 50 gigabytes. I didn't really have enough storage space, so I had to get a micro SD card to do it. But you know, obviously everything is gonna be much smaller, but again, you have that option if you decide to get a dock. You could even get a portable monitor, like I said, and run this. But overall, I've found so far, you know, playing some of these more demanding games like Elden Ring, things that are a little bit newer, more graphically intensive, I have not had any problems at all. And overall, just using the controller for a while with the default configuration without doing anything fancy to it, I'm able to continue to play and not feel discomforted over a period of time, whereas I felt that with the Switch and maybe similar types of gaming consoles, things like that, where they are portable. The audio on this also comes out really nice, so I haven't had any issues with that. You know, it's plenty loud. The battery life is something to obviously have some concern over. You're playing a demanding game like this, you're probably not going to last that long on portable battery. I'd say, you know, this probably would get me a 2 to 3 hour session at max playing a game like this where it's more graphically demanding, which is to be expected with something like this. But overall, I found that, you know, the time I was able to get out of it, as long as you you know, are weary of that, then you should be able to get plenty of good time out of a game. The other thing you can of course do is get an extended power cord and just plug that in. You do want to make sure you have a high wattage, essentially like supercharged cable. It does come with one, of course, but there are third-party ones that will work. If you plug in one that's not powerful enough, the Steam Deck will not charge. Like, let's say I was playing this game, the Steam Deck will not actually charge enough comparably to what it's actually using for power. So just to be bear in mind of that. But yeah, this is essentially running, I believe, at like 1280 by 720. So, you know, you don't have super high resolution, but because the screen is only 7 inches, you know, this is something that ultimately runs really, really quite well. And I have no issues with like lag or anything like that. Gameplay is very smooth and it's easy enough to play and just run through. So anyway, thought I would do a quick video review, give you guys some idea of what to expect. Overall, I'm very, very happy with the Steam Deck, and I think if you're looking for something like this, you want really probably the ultimate portable you know, system that's going to play modern PC games that are working with a controller, have the ability to dock this, hook up a monitor, and maybe even use it with an Xbox controller. You have that option as well. And then in addition to that, you can run all of your old school emulated games. If you want to turn it into a massive emulation system, you could get a specific micro SD card, load up all the old school ROMs, and you could literally have thousands and thousands of games on this with ease. So anyway, thanks for checking out my video review on the Steam Deck. Hopefully you found this helpful, and I will talk to you later.